Hi there. Well, we have a bunch of people dialing in. That's fantastic. We're going to give it a minute or two to make sure that our audience arrives. While we're waiting to make sure that all the people who want to be here are here, I will display the antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every meeting. And our full antitrust policy is available on the website. If you've got any questions and you're from a Linux Foundation member company, you can, of course, contact our counsel, Andy Updegrove. Now, the star of today is going to be the Security Assurance Reference Guide. And Mark Giese is going to walk through some of the feedback we've had around the guide. There is a new page on our website, the first iteration of the page showing the Security Assurance Reference Guide in a dedicated location. I just shared the link to that in the chat. So this particular website, this page we've got, is really designed to try and make sure that people understand what's going on here. And the document as displayed is obviously under editing, and we will be able to expand it as needed. Okay, with that context, I'm going to hand over to Mark Giese, the chair of our specification and the person who will lead the discussion on this call around feedback to the assurance guide. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Shane. We had gotten a number of good comments about how we might rephrase some of the terms on the security guide. And I thought this would be a good opportunity. We generally like to bring this up in front of the community and have everybody, kind of weigh in on those comments. So that's what we want to do today. So what I'm going to do is pull up the two different sets of feedback we received. So give me 1 second here. And I will do that. Okay. So we have two different sets from Chris and Marcel. Okay. Let me share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes. No problem at all.
Great. So what we have, and again, for quick note, this is the security guide, not the specification itself. It's meant to be complementary to the spec, the OpenChain spec, and it's kind of a natural progression if someone wants to move on from the core, license compliance. Here's a guide to help them consider security vulnerability considerations. This is, again, to establish trust between a software supplier and their customers. And in this document, this is okay, Chris is the feedback. And in this document, he had some wording recommendations, which I think are good. And I think we should just give them quick consideration. So this is the first one. And he's recommending that we use the word demonstrate. And I think that makes sense because to ensure something is more stronger. But this is what we have here is a simple basic requirement to say you have a policy. And that in addition to having a documented policy, that you have a process that's documented that demonstrates that developers are using best practices. So the first choice of words here is that demonstrate as opposed to ensure. And he has over here that the coding to reduce and eliminate, which I think is more reasonable wording in the code. Any
Well,
concerns about this wording?
Hi, this is Jan. I'm not sure if I would read reduce and eliminate. It sounds a little bit double taking, isn't it? So it's like a double takeout. So either I want to reduce or I want to eliminate.
How about we change it to or? I mean, I understand what you're saying. You're saying it's a little redundant.
Yeah.
I mean, now the other question is we can do or is that too weak? Well, the question really comes down to, do we want to choose? It's really a choice between reduce, which is a little less strong than eliminate, or, and then we can do an or. Any preference? Any thoughts?
I will be fine with or.
Well, we're trying to set a goal here, right? So we want the software developers to use best practices so that they can eliminate insecure code. So I guess the question is then, if you leave it in eliminate, are you saying the goal is to eliminate, although we might not achieve that goal? And then do we have to prove that we have eliminated insecure code, which is going to be just about impossible?
Yeah, that's right.
So the preference is, in your case?
Well,
what do you?
If this is a goal and not necessarily a result that we expect them to prove, then I would just say I would leave out reduce and just go to eliminate, straight to eliminate.
But here we are talking about the verification material, doesn't we?
That is correct. This is actual things that they must present to somebody if they were ever audited. That's why I like to think about this evidence. This is evidence that you have to show. And you have to have a documented process that demonstrates software developers are using best practices in their code to eliminate insecure code. I think it's a little stronger to say eliminate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Particularly when it's a verification material, it's quite a hard challenge, because if they have to prove that they have a process that eliminates it, that's quite a high demand.
That's right.
It's almost like
asking.
Go ahead.
We're not. I don't know that we can ever prove that the process will eliminate insecure code, but they're using best practices that can help them to eliminate that, right?
Yeah, I think the analogy we might look at is software bugs.
Yeah.
Right. If this was for quality and your help, you want to write a statement about quality assurance. Your goal is you hope that they eliminate all bugs, but you know that in practicality that's not a reality, right? Yeah. So if we just stuck with eliminate, are people still troubled by that? Okay, so I think we'll do is we'll just stick with the original eliminate. Okay.
I have another concern here though about using ISO 26262. Is that a documented process?
It actually that is, yeah. So
or is it a standard that says
it's
to get done?
My understanding, it's kind of a quality standard commonly used in the automotive industry.
Yeah, I've heard
around. Yeah,
I don't know that that referencing it right there, it makes any sense.
People would understand it. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that?
This is just a side note. If there was any confusion about how the standard works, I think, as you said, Mark, we just tie it back to the existing process standards to let people know. That's our mental model.
Mm-hmm. So we'll just let it remove this suggestion. I think this. Okay. So all right. Okay, then that's fine. We'll remove that, and we'll actually accept this one over here.
Except it should be that demonstrates.
Yeah. Except first. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, and we'll just let this go for now. We can leave in, yeah, that's fine. Okay. I'm looking for the.
Okay, so you want us to leave that in?
No, I'm trying to work with word track here.
Okay.
I'll get back to this. I want to move along, and I'll remember. I have notes taken here. No, I think this is fine. Actually, standards. Well, I guess if we remove this, then road vehicle safety, a safety standard developed for, I guess, is fine.
Well, my point is, I don't know. I mean, is that really what we want to do? Point them to some other standard, or do we want them to be having their own process?
Actually, I'm wondering one thing. Is this whole thing was added? I'm trying to understand because it didn't, the change, I don't remember it being there. Actually, I have to look at the original. What I'll do is I'm going to revise. Basically, what I'm going to do is we're going to accept this change right here, right, and return the regular verification code. I'm sorry, this verification piece of evidence back to the original text, except for this wording over here. Okay.
Mark?
Yes.
I had one more comment about the word demonstrate. Is this really perfect wording that the process demonstrates something, or is it more a process that whatever demands or suggests or makes software developers to use best practices? How does the process demonstrate something? This
Okay.
was a comment I made.
Okay, in the other your other comments document. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I understand the point, but yeah, because the process itself doesn't demonstrate that they're using the best practices, but I understand the intention of the sentence.
How about implements? That implements
No.
a documented process that implements software developers not that software implements best practices in eliminating insecure code. I mean, the process, you want a process that exists.
You want a documented process that software developers can implement?
I think
they are applying, I would
Yeah,
say.
Yeah. How about this is what I was thinking. Implements. eliminating?
Mm. I just digged a little bit into this ISO 26262. It's this automotive functional safety standard white paper, and it's a kind of quality management standard for automotive industry. I'm not sure whether, and it goes into product and process safety. Not sure whether this is really directing into this those that are probably not from the automotive industry into the right direction.
Yeah. Actually, let me. Yeah. I think what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate this whole example here because I'm not sure. It seems like it's adding more confusion than benefit.
Yeah.
Now, let me. Yeah. So. But before we probably should just get closure on this initial wording: a document process that implements best practices for eliminating insecure code. I'm not sure. Known code. Well, let me stop there before we worry about the word insecure code. Is this the right direction? That implements.
I'm fine with it.
Good,
Me
sounds
too.
good.
Okay. All right. Any other concerns about what we have here? Okay, I'm going to move on. I'll just go ahead.
Sorry, just one thought. Document process that implements the use of best practices, because before we also had the word using.
Well, you want a process document that it implements as first uses best practices. Well, okay.
I think it's implied there in the word implements.
Yeah, okay. I just had the thought that people might think they have to define or whatever, come up with new best practice, and it's by using the word use is more okay. They should use existing best practices, but probably it's.
Yeah, I can see your concern, but I think it's okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Less is more. Great. I'm glad. I'm always looking to reuse words. Okay. Over here we have. All right. I'll let people read what we have here, and we have an additional statement. Basically, so people understand what's going on here. Everybody gets to define the scope of their program. No one is bounded by the well, you must do it to the whole company, and everybody must do it for the whole company. Some companies might want to do it for the whole company. Some might want to do it for a certain product line. Some might want to do it for a certain division within their company. So this is where people get to define the scope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is largely the rationale. It's not intended. It's more or less to give people a sense of why we're doing this. I'm not sure. Again, the question would be, does this enhance what's already here? Is this an important piece? This is a question I often ask because, again, one of our guiding principles is less is more. Whenever we can say the same, a precise thing in less words, it's better because it's a shorter, tighter spec. That's kind of our philosophy. So the question really is, does this really add an important piece of information to the actual rationale?
Not from my point of view.
Not from my point of view either. It actually kind of makes it a little bit more confusing to me.
Yeah, and in some
it's
in some
about
ways
the
it all.
how.
Yeah, it's about the how
where
versus
we
the
actually
why.
say we don't want to define the how.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to find the why. So,
Yep.
okay. Unless anybody else has any other comments, or if there's other additional things to add back, of course, we'll consider adding something as long as it further enhances or makes it better. Okay. Next one. So what we have here is the basically, requesting that they're implementing what this is where they get to take action to implement actual methods that are commonly used, the best practices. Okay. Now, again, well, the question is, I can see where this could work, where they're saying something's discovered after the fact because it's a new unknown. But again, one can argue also that known vulnerabilities are things that are learned at any time. But if we do want to emphasize here that not only do we want vulnerability management to be done at the time prior to release of some product, but also when something's learned after the release, so after the fact. We think that's an important part of their program. So then in some ways, this kind of enforces that additional notion that somehow they'll realize something in the future. That's what I'm hoping it does, right? So this recommendation is to add this in. Any thoughts about, do people believe that this is actually an enhancement to that? Does it make that point stronger?
Yeah, kind of, because you're requiring a channel by which somebody might report a previously unknown vulnerability in the product, either in the open source itself. Well, we're focused on open source here, right? So
in either case, it's open source, you're correct. But it's open source that's in the product before you release it, or something you learned about the open source after the product's released. So
I think isn't it even more complex? I mean, especially the unknown parts. So it's something that is really new. It's like a 0 day or something. If that requires probably a different procedure and processing than the known vulnerability management from my point of view. So that's, I would probably definitely not put them in the same manner, because I need to have, for those that are absolutely new, I need to have a different treatment, because I need another assessment. I need to act immediately, probably. I need to assess the information that's coming in and qualify it. And after this has all been done, I need to provide a fix. These are things that are much more, much different than to address a known vulnerability, I guess. Or do I get this wrong here?
this is only about people contacting the organization about the vulnerabilities.
So it's actually a known vulnerability that I haven't recognized.
yeah, I mean, one of the challenges I think is that the word new unknown, it was unknown. So I guess we wanted to get the wording to where we talk about newly discovered, something like that.
Okay, or maybe we could just eliminate the known, the new, and known. Just say effectively respond to vulnerabilities. Kind of not finding the word by external inquiry. So basically, if somebody has a question about any kind of a vulnerability, new or known, they can ask through this channel.
Okay, so just so we understand too, though, known availability is a defined term within this document. And the idea was we didn't want to put any pressure on people to search out things that haven't been reported by the community, right? to be responsible for that. I mean, it's not that they can't be, of course they can, but we wanted to make sure that we were focused on what we refer to as known vulnerabilities, things that are clearly been identified and you should be expected to fix them. Okay. So in some ways, I think if in theory, if I took out all this wording, this is just simply saying you're able to respond to known vulnerabilities by external inquiries. So for example, if something is discovered after you ship your product, that becomes a known vulnerability and it's still covered by this. If I, in theory, took out this whole term, right?
Mm.
Because it's still a known vulnerability. It's just something that's discovered 6 months after you ship. It becomes identified by the community at large, and then if it gets a CVE, and we can have the community in the world can talk about it. They can report it to you. So I'll make a suggestion again. I always appreciate the fact that we have people helping us fine tune and make this more precise. So these recommendations are really they're desirable to put into consideration. The question is, if we remove them, can we still achieve? Are we still achieving the same objective? And I think we are. That's my suggestion. But do people disagree with that? In other words, I think we're still capturing what what Chris is trying to emphasize here. Does someone disagree with that? Two things. Do you disagree with what I said? And do you think it's important to have this additional wording?
Okay, so if I think about this, basically, if you're saying a new vulnerability and you're looking in the open source, so you're reporting a new or responding to an unknown vulnerability in an open source package, doing it by product.
So first of all, use the word
offering doesn't make sense. It should be reported on the package itself, so everybody knows about it.
Right, and that's what known vulnerabilities means. It's
Right.
It's the things that are known. So we're only requiring people right now. I mean, of course, someone can report to you some unknown vulnerability that they happen to find, and in fact, that happens a lot. Sometimes they'll go to a big vendor and they'll say, "Oh, you have this vulnerability. I won't report it to the world or even the CVE database yet because you can fix it." That's a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't preclude that, right? We are not precluding that at all. This is really saying that we expect you to be responsible when a known vulnerability comes out, that if it's brought to your attention, if someone can bring it to your attention, that you have the ability to receive that information. Of course, I guess what I'm trying to do is avoid right now anything beyond what's a known vulnerability. Not to say that in the future we want to go broader on this. Of course, we would potentially want to, but we always start with a more like a minimum viable product, a minimum viable guide. And then we will grow it out as we see growing trends. So I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah.
Is this just for really clarifying? I mean, is this the request that there is a process or a mechanism in place that is surveying the components of existing or released software that you have in the field, and when there a known vulnerability arrives that's affecting these components, that you can reach out or patch your own software?
This is to be able to
information upstream.
I think the latter. I think it's this opportunity. Either like you shipped your software and one or two things could have happened. You overlooked a known vulnerability prior to shipping, and you should have. Okay. And this is an opportunity for them to report that. Or it's also possible after the software ships that something is discovered by the community that wasn't known at the time you shipped, which then becomes a known vulnerability, and someone can also report that to you, and you may not, they have a right or ability to report that to you.
So it's about the interface that you provide to be contacted about vulnerabilities inside the code that we have shipped.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and again, I really do appreciate this extra kind of nuanced wording to try to see if we've got it right. So this is really testing us and making us revisit exactly what our guiding principles are. And And I think at this point, I think the original wording is okay, is sufficient enough. And I, even though I think this was a good attempt to give us that exercise to consider a broader view of it. Does anybody disagree with just leaving the text as is? Original text, that means removing the recommended wording? Okay,
Yes, I'm fine with removing the new recommendations and going back to the original wording.
okay.
I also would suggest it brings more clarity.
I would also think about,
Go ahead.
the thing we talked about earlier, the, can you scroll up the 3 bullet points where we were talking about the process?
Here. I mean, oh, these bullet points or?
Earlier, no, the code and where we talked about the, go up more. I think it's up more.
The policy one? Yeah.
Insecure code, the insecure code for eliminating not insecure code, but known vulnerabilities. That's
Yes.
what we eliminate there.
Yeah. Yes, known vulnerabilities. Yep.
But isn't it also about the code that you're writing by yourself? So that,
Yeah, we're not talking about that here, though. We're talking about the open source only.
okay.
Well, yeah, in some ways, yeah, it is about the open source, but it is, I also do think about it as it's part of your code once you bring the open source into your code, right? So you're right, you're both right. It is about the open source, and this is what the community is reporting on the open source. Usually proprietary code, there's not as much of a formal community around your own proprietary code, although your customers could be that. But I always like to emphasize one thing, though. This is about your code, which happens to be built on a lot of open source. So, but we are focused on the open source. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Good point. All right. Moving on. So in some ways, this has helped us think about and improve the point above. So wherever we see new, we're going to assume that we're not ready to go there yet. Okay. I'm just scrolling down. Okay, that's the end of that. So that's one set of comments, and I do really appreciate those kind of comments because again, it's testing, how well have we thought about this problem, and maybe our scope is just not broad enough yet to to bring those in yet. Okay, so here's another set. I believe by Marcel. Okay, so Marcel, you did emphasize we used SPDX, but as we gave a definition of it, but we haven't really made reference to it, and that's a valid point. Partially this is I think there's a place to make a reference to it, but we want to be careful because we don't want it to be our spec to be overly prescriptive to any one particular bill of materials format, although the OpenChain and the SPDX are cousins or siblings, actually. In some ways, they're related, highly related through the Linux Foundation. And I think we can incorporate how we might make it and later in the document, we can talk about how to inject it as a possible, for example, in the bill of materials section when we get there. Okay.
Marcel's not on the call anymore.
Okay. So anyway, but I think that's a valid point made, and we'll get to that. We kind of discussed this already. And he was including the word demands to use. I think the wording we have is a little bit more direct, and I don't think we need to revisit this one right now again. Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. So we're still in the section of this is what the competence. This is more like the training section, and he has some recommendations on wordsmithing here. Now, when we have verification materials, again, these are actual evidence that I like to always think about. If you're ever audited by your customer and you claim to be OpenChain conforming, you should be able to show this evidence. So let's see how that plays out here. He's recommending here to remove the word documented.
And he also restructured a little bit because for the different program participants is now the third line where the assignment takes place. I think that's a good change. Makes it more clear.
Yeah, so you're saying he's pointing out it's redundant, and you're highlighting that point as well. So by keeping this in here, we can have a list of roles and responsibilities and a list of program participants who actually are assigned to those roles.
I would make the wording the same between 3121 and 3122. So a document that lists the roles with corresponding responsibilities, and then a document that identifies the competencies for each role, or you can just make it all one.
Yeah, in other words, unite these two to one, down to one. Yeah. Okay. So what we can try to do is, first of all, we can have to enable editing. It's going to send me all the way back to the top. I'm going to go back down again. Okay. So, yeah.
And maybe even saying a document is too prescriptive. Maybe we just say documented roles with corresponding responsibilities and competencies. And then, so they can make it as a document or as a Confluence page or however they want to.
So one recommendation you're saying is get rid of the A and say document roles with corresponding responsibilities.
Yeah.
And a list of program participants assigned to the defined roles.
No, we're gonna combine 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
and
yeah,
I'm gonna put on. Yeah.
I think the idea was to have the 3.122 as part of the roles description. The competencies are part of the role description, and then leave 3.123, which is now as new 3.122.
Yes.
So you want to move this one up, is what you're saying.
This into the roles, because it makes sense to have the competencies to define together with the roles.
Yeah.
And then
fully document.
You just copied remove.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Try that again. Let's do that again. You're recommending. Let's see if I don't do this. Okay.
Exactly. And now take the second line and put it in attachment to the roles so that the competencies are defined together with the roles.
So to wordsmith it, document the roles with corresponding responsibilities and competencies
Genau.
for each role.
Okay. Okay. So first of all, let me check this. Oh, sorry. No, let me accept that. Okay. So you're suggesting again. I'll start typing. I don't want to cut and paste things. Go ahead. Give me some recommended wording.
That was nice.
Document the list of roles with corresponding responsibilities and competencies for each role.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now at the beginning, document.
Yeah, I'll have to reword it in other words. Accept.
Let's say document the list of roles. Oh, sorry. I guess, right, documented, yeah, I guess documented list of roles, it makes sense with the way the rest of the
Mhm.
evidence is phrased. Okay, so you can take out the.
You,
So that, no, that one stays.
which one are you recommending? I'm sorry.
I'm going back to item 1, take out the. And then it matches, the syntax matches with the rest of the items.
Mhm.
Okay, so a documented list of roles, and then this one stays in.
Okay. Any thoughts?
So you document the roles and then you assign people to the roles. It's 2 different actions.
Okay, good. Makes sense. I'm wondering why this even happened. Well, for any other thoughts about that? Everybody okay with that? I think it looks right. Okay. Something happened here. I have to look into this from the original document. But I think what this is a matter of putting back what was originally intended here. This is not what, because I know it's proofread, and I don't think this would have passed the proofreading. I have multiple proofreaders. We'll come back. I'll come back to that at a different time. Okay. The next section we're on to. Well, we've already talked about the program scope in the previous one, right? Now, this is something we've discussed because we discussed previously. Here, Marcel is recommending, he's asking, what does it mean? Organizational knowledge of known vulnerabilities exists. Okay, so now, before I go any further, let me explain the purpose of this kind of section is really to kind of give a more of a high level motivation for what was trying to be achieved here. And ultimately, we want to achieve all this through the verification materials. Like that's again, the core evidence that must be delivered. This is making a general statement, I think, about the organizational knowledge exists. The question is, does it add value? Because when you come down to here, it's basically saying the methods above must be implemented. Okay, those are the methods. And the question in here is, does this create more confusion, or does it add value? That's the question. And if it creates some confusion, we have to either eliminate it or further, I guess, define it.
I personally don't think it adds anything. I think it creates a little bit of confusion, like what exactly does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody, there's 200,000 people in my company, whereas the size of a medium-sized city. So does everybody have to know about all the known vulnerabilities? Or what does that really mean? But I think it's really covered in the second bullet, because you have to have a way of detecting those vulnerabilities in the supplied software. And that's really where the rubber meets the road.
I think also the second line is what it is all about, and how you are organizing this. You need to have it somehow to get the second part done.
So I'll play a little devil's advocate. I'm not opposing your suggestions here for getting rid of it. I definitely think we could. I'll try to take the other stance, and then we'll see if it. I think when you say organizational knowledge, I think of somewhere in the organization there's knowledge, right? It's like, I think in the OpenChain licensing spec, we talk about having some knowledge around license compliance, license obligations, okay? And I don't believe necessarily that I would interpret this as saying the whole organization, everybody inside the organization has the knowledge, but that you have the knowledge in it exists within your organization in the right place, at least. That's I think it's more of almost like an introductory to the next 4 bullets that follow, right? However, if people read this and they feel like they need to understand that better, and it does create confusion, it doesn't add to this, then I would definitely want to recommend it being removed as well.
If it would require that you have somehow the knowledge organized, so not an organization, but an organized knowledge database or something like that, then it's, I think it would be clear, but this is makes it pretty.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about doing is actually moving it as not the bullet point, but like a high level statement exists, and then the other ones just kind of note exists, and then it's defined here. I'm trying to get rid of this bullet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it's not getting rid of the bullet.
Because you're in the you have to accept it, then it will be gone. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. So exists, and then then it talks about the methods, and then the verification artifact talks about this clearly attempts to make sure these guys are implemented. So this is almost defining organizational knowledge. Now the question is that better? Is that not good enough? Should we remove it?
Now we have a list of methods, and methods are something that allow me to do and achieve something, but they're not a kind of a knowledge database or something which they might require.
So how about organizational knowledge exists for well, I guess what I'm seeing here, but again, this may not be how people see it. Organizational knowledge of known vulnerabilities exists to have a method for detecting, right? For methods, you have organizational knowledge somewhere within your organization. You have the knowledge to build these methods. I guess if we remove that one sentence, I just think having a bulleted set of methods is a little bit. It needs like an introduction. It needs like something that flows in correctly. And maybe the word organizational knowledge is not that, but somehow we need a sentence that leads into the methods. Like known organizational knowledge of known vulnerabilities exists to enable a method, or something like that. No, I'm not really liking this wording either. To enable, and then somehow we want to. It's more of a lead-in sentence than it is the method itself.
Okay.
I think
One rephrasing I might suggest is to take organization out from the beginning and have it read, knowledge of known vulnerabilities exists in the organization to enable blah, blah, blah.
the knowledge of handling known vulnerabilities.
Well, I think I just want to keep it as simple as possible to lead to the fact that you have to have methods for these. It's really a lead-in sentence to say you have these methods. So this is the core right here, the nucleus of this whole requirement, right? Knowledge of known vulnerabilities exists within the organization.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure enables is right either. For developing method, for developing a method or developing.
Aren't these methods of handling? I mean, in the end, it's the treatment and how to handle the known vulnerabilities.
Right. It's the methods for that's right. For I think the word handling is correct in that sense. I think the idea is correct. I don't think this wording is exactly right yet to flow into these methods. So
Hi, Mark. This is Yari. I'm just wondering if the knowledge is the correct word in the beginning. Like it's like practices, organizational practices, because method is something you kind of do.
well, okay, yeah. So there's two different things going on, right? I think for the most part, I think people are okay with the fact that we have a request that you have methods, right? You're not challenging that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And now the question is, I think the intent here is to say that there's knowledge within your organization, right? To develop these,
To do something.
to have these
Oh.
methods, to be
Yeah.
competent enough to have these methods.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if does that so okay. Does that work? Is that a better?
Getting there. Instead of saying to develop I would say to develop the following. Otherwise, to develop seems like you only have to have one of those.
Yeah, that's right. I'm struggling with the singularness of it.
Yeah.
I think we are getting there.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can get rid of this possibly.
Yes. Generally, the process happens first and the method is underneath the process.
Yeah, and then we have over here for the methods identified above. Okay, good. So I think we've actually got slightly tighter, more clearer wording, and I think that's a really good thing. And we even got rid of some wording, which is even better. Okay, we've talked about these comments in the previous one because Marcel commented on top of Chris's document. Okay, so I think Marcel makes a good point here. So we use the word supplied software, and we should be consistent with that. Okay, so let's go back. What's going on here is, there's a request for a what we call, you basically have a method for going through systematically through your bill of materials and ensuring that you have you're taking the right steps to apply your methods. Okay, so here the word software solution is probably best to use what we have defined in the document, which would be supplied software. So this is where, and I think this wording was a little challenging at the time, but the idea was to, this is where we get to say, well, if you learn about something after the fact, that you have a process for handling that. I think we can change this to the. Okay. So all we're doing is using the definition as opposed to introducing yet another word that could confuse it with the definition that already exists. I guess he deleted the word post. Not sure. Let's see. We wanted to say, after the fact. I'm not sure the word post was always the best wording, but I'm not sure I want to eliminate the word post yet. So you can go ahead and accept and put it back. Accept.
I think post-release puts it the best, actually. It's absolutely clear. And
Okay, so post software supplied release, is the whole wording like that? Or do we want to get rid of this? We can get rid of the word software, supplied software here and just let it be referenced here, post release. We could do that.
yeah,
And it's a hyphen, and then it talks about may impact the supplied software. And okay, is
I
it?
like that better. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. Okay, we're almost done here, and we're almost out of time. So again, this is all really great feedback, both the initial feedback and then the evolution of that feedback. For the open source components, a record is maintained. Now, he's pointing out the record should be maintained for things that were not, where no vulnerabilities were identified. And I think that was attempted to be done by this statement here, where no action was required. In other words, the question is, do people feel that's achieved? In other words, he's saying that, well, you might do an analysis of something, you might have a record of it that no vulnerabilities were found.
yeah, I guess what you're requesting is different. It's there is a vulnerability found, but you're probably not, it's not impacting your solution. And then you are recording that
That's
you're
true.
not taking action for that particular cause.
That is true.
And this is what is I would get from that statement.
Yes.
And yeah, that is correct. But I was hoping that that would also incorporate the situation where when nothing is found, no action is required as well. But let's go to the heart of his comment. And is it important for us to require them to have a record for every component, whether a vulnerability was found or not?
I guess if you have a list of software bill of materials and you have assigned all vulnerabilities that you know at that particular point in time, and you freeze this position, so you can restore it, have a kind of an audit mechanism that says, okay, at that point in time, I had that knowledge. That will be fully sufficient, because it's difficult to write everything that you don't know.
Yeah. It's like saying like software doesn't have bugs. Like, oh, I'm going to record all the software that doesn't have bugs.
Exactly.
I actually think that. Okay. Any other thoughts? I actually think that it's okay not to. I don't want to be too prescriptive here, and say that you have to have records when things aren't, nothing's found. Not to say that that's a good practice. I think that would be great as an organization to do, just as a completeness, but I wouldn't want to be requiring that through the spec, because we're trying to be a little bit more general purpose, less prescriptive. So, and again, it's analogous to quality assurance. So I would say we would leave it as is. Any disagreement?
I tend to agree with Mark, and maybe that's another point, like having this point of, let's say, at one point of time there were no known vulnerabilities in our release, and that's one of those best practices in the other document.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about these best practices.
Sure, and that can be done, yeah, exactly, in an alternative document which guides people on how best to implement this. Yes. Okay, we have one last comment here. I guess he's talking about this being kind of confusing in terms of the 18 months. The idea here is that within 18 months, anytime you have you're claiming you're complying with this guide, it has to be relevant within the last 18 months. It's borrowed from the original our original core ISO spec, right? Do people find that he has this comment here that this is not easily understandable. A document affirming this can only be available 18 months after the conformance validation is obtained. But if this document is required for conformance in the first place, actually, I don't know if it's a vicious cycle. It's simply saying that you have to have a document at some point in time that says we are conforming on this day, right? And that date of that document is what determines the 18-month time clock. And if at some point in the middle of that you want to reconfirm, you can reset the clock. But after 18 months, we want to force people to revisit it again. Do people find that confusing?
How is it phrased in the open source, in the OpenChain document? You have something similar in there, right?
What I will do is I'll verify that it's the same. I was expecting it would be the same except for the word guide, but I'll verify that. We're kind of out of time, but I think it's worth for me to do a follow-up. And if I think there's difference in wording, we can revisit that again. But again, I think we're at the end. We were able to incorporate everybody's feedback. Again, continue to please provide this feedback. This is a great opportunity for us to discuss it and make us, think hard about what we've done, even if we don't choose that feedback. It sometimes is, it's really helpful. Okay. And again, we're only stronger because we're a community of feedback. All right. With that, I would say we're done.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Thank you,
Awesome
everyone.
meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Take care now.